Welcome back to NASCAR Unfiltered, and this week, we need to talk about something that honestly hurts to watch as a NASCAR fan. Because what is happening with Kyle Busch right now is not just a bad stretch of results. It is not just a rough patch in a long career. What we are witnessing in real time feels like a defining moment. Maybe even the beginning of the final chapter of one of the greatest careers this sport has ever produced. And here at NASCAR Unfiltered, we are not going to look away from it. We are going to break down everything. The results, the frustration, the public war of words, the physical issues nobody knew about, and the massive question that now hangs over the entire NASCAR garage every single week. Because once you hear everything that has been happening behind the scenes, this situation becomes even bigger than most fans realize. Let's get into it. The promise that never delivered. Coming into the 2026 NASCAR season, there were real reasons to believe Kyle Busch and Richard Childress Racing were finally ready to take a genuine step forward. And then came one of the coolest individual moments of Busch's entire career. After 21 attempts, he finally won the pole position for the Daytona 500. Think about what that means. Kyle Busch, 63 Cup Series wins, 2 championships, one of the most decorated drivers in the history of this sport, had never once started first at the biggest race of the year. Until now. When he ripped off that qualifying lap, fans went crazy. It felt symbolic. It felt like the number 8 team had found something real again. It felt like Rowdy was about to remind the entire garage exactly who he is. And then the season started. And almost immediately, everything collapsed. That qualifying speed never once translated into race results. Week after week, the number 8 Chevrolet looked completely lost compared to the powerhouse organizations surrounding it. Joe Gibbs Racing, Hendrick Motorsports, Team Penske, all operating at a level RCR simply could not match. Through the opening stretch of the season, Busch could not crack the top 5 even once. His best result through the first 10 races was a 12th place finish at the Circuit of the Americas. For Kyle Busch, a driver who used to dominate entire seasons, that is genuinely shocking to process. Then came Kansas Speedway, and that race felt like rock bottom. Busch finished 35th, for laps down, completely unable to keep pace with the field. The numbers became painful to look at. 0 top 5s, 1 top 10, a career-worst driver rating, average finishes buried deep in the back half of the field. This is a driver who used to walk into race weekends expecting to win. Now he is fighting just to stay relevant in the playoff conversation. The public war, Busch versus Hamlin. That is when the criticism went public. And the person who fired first was someone who knows Kyle Busch better than almost anyone, Denny Hamlin, his former teammate at Joe Gibbs Racing. Hamlin did not hold back. He openly questioned whether Kyle could still adapt to the next-gen car and basically suggested he no longer had the consistency to compete for wins on a regular basis. Coming from someone with Hamlin's credibility inside the sport, that hit hard. And everyone watching knew exactly what was coming next. Kyle Busch was never going to stay quiet about that. Before the Kansas weekend, he fired right back with full force, telling Hamlin directly that if he wanted to switch cars, they could swap any day of the week. He said he would love to see Denny try to drive the number 8 better than he could. That instantly became one of the biggest storylines in the entire garage. And then during the Kansas race itself, Busch started racing Hamlin aggressively, even though neither of them was anywhere near the front of the field. This was no longer just hard racing. This had become personal. Busch then poured gasoline on the fire afterward when he warned that Hamlin might find himself getting run into again, because in his view, Denny was publicly trying to paint him as finished. Whether you agree with Busch's approach or not, you understand where it comes from. This is one of the most competitive drivers NASCAR has ever seen. And suddenly people are questioning whether he still belongs among the elite. That is not something a man like Kyle Busch processes quietly. What made it even more interesting was what Hamlin said later. That Busch actually helped make him a stronger driver on intermediate tracks, and that NASCAR still needs the old Kyle Busch. That line says everything. Because deep down, everyone inside that garage knows the sport feels different when Rowdy is running up front, and NASCAR has always been more compelling when he is at his best. RCR makes a desperate move. Behind the scenes, Richard Childress Racing already knew something had to change. On April 27th, the team removed crew chief Jim Bullman from atop the pit box and replaced him with longtime RCR veteran Andy Street. Organizations do not make moves like that unless the internal pressure is through the roof. That was a desperate attempt to save a season that was slipping away fast. To Street's credit, there were immediate small signs of improvement. The car looked more competitive at Texas Motor Speedway, and especially at Watkins Glen, where Busch finally grabbed an 8th-place finish. And that Watkins Glen result revealed something important that most fans initially missed. After the race, audio from Busch's team radio spread across social media almost instantly. He came on the radio asking the team to find a doctor immediately because he needed a shot. And suddenly, fans started realizing this season was not just mentally exhausting for Kyle Busch. It was physically destroying him as well. Later reports confirmed that Busch entered the 2026 season already dealing with lingering physical issues, including a leg injury that had been present before the year even started. Add illness on top of that. Add the stress of nonstop criticism and terrible results. Add the emotional weight of fighting this battle publicly every single weekend. And now you begin to understand why this season has looked so completely draining from the outside. And then remember, Kyle Busch is 41 years old. In NASCAR, once people start questioning whether age is catching up to a driver, those questions never fully go away. The technical problem nobody is talking about enough. Here at NASCAR Unfiltered, we think a massive part of this entire situation connects directly to the next-gen car. When Busch joined RCR back in 2023, they actually looked ahead of the curve. Kyle won 3 races during his first season with the organization, and it genuinely felt like the move had revived his career after leaving Joe Gibbs Racing. The optimism was real, and it was earned. But NASCAR develops fast. While Hendrick Motorsports, Team Penske, and Joe Gibbs Racing kept pushing their next-gen programs forward, RCR slowly began falling behind technically. Busch himself has admitted that the organization failed to keep advancing while other teams figured out the platform. And in modern NASCAR, if your program misses even a small window of development, the field swallows you whole. The gap becomes real, and it becomes difficult to close quickly. That is the environment Kyle Busch is currently racing in. A 2-time champion in equipment that is simply not at the level of the top organizations week after week. What comes next? The biggest question in NASCAR. The rumors about Busch's future are now getting louder every single week. One team consistently being connected to him is Spire Motorsports, particularly because Busch already has established relationships there through the Truck Series side of the sport. And when Dale Earnhardt Jr. publicly predicted that Busch could eventually land at Spire to try to revive the final stage of his career, fans immediately started wondering whether the writing is already on the wall at RCR. Kevin Harvick has also weighed in publicly, expressing concern about the pressure surrounding Busch's contract situation and openly questioning where this RCR partnership is heading long-term. That is a significant statement coming from someone who understands exactly how these situations spiral inside top organizations. But here is the thing that makes this entire story impossible to look away from. Kyle Busch refuses to quit, even after more than 100 Cup Series races without a win, even with all the public criticism, even with the playoff cut line getting further away every weekend. He still climbs into that car believing he can get back to the front. And a huge part of that motivation comes from his son Brexton. Busch recently admitted something that hit NASCAR fans hard, that Brexton does not really remember the years when his father dominated this sport every single week. Think about how powerful that is. An entire generation of younger fans never truly experienced peak Kyle Busch, the version that could win anywhere, anytime, in anything. And you can feel that realization driving him right now. He wants his son to see him fight. He wants to prove he still belongs. No matter how difficult this season has been, Kyle Busch's legacy is already untouchable. He is one of the greatest drivers this sport has ever produced. But the biggest question in NASCAR right now is whether this season becomes the beginning of one final comeback story, or the painful ending of a legendary career that fans never wanted to see fade away like this. Even fans who spent years rooting against Kyle Busch do not want to see a legend go out this way. Because we all remember what NASCAR felt like when Rowdy was at his absolute best. And deep down, most of us are still hoping somehow, some way, that version of Kyle Busch has one more run left in him. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Can Kyle Busch still win again in the Cup Series? Does RCR need bigger changes? Or is a fresh start the only answer now? We want to hear from you. Hit that like button, subscribe to NASCAR Unfiltered, and stay locked in, because this story is far from over. We will see you in the next one.